Okay, yeah, so welcome to P5LIVE sessions. This is just the beta version of it while we test out streaming. Right now we are trying to do it all from one computer and I can hear the fan going crazy. So we'll see if this will work. But for now, hopefully. What are we going to do here? So what is this thing? This is P5LIVE. It's an editor for using P5.js with the focus on live coding. And I thought it might be nice just to do some live streaming, live coding with this tool and demonstrate aspects of what it can do while just having fun, improvising and coding myself. I'll try to just do totally random new stuff and might look into using just a random reference to throw in some new ingredients that aren't expected to get things happening. Yeah, but I think I just want to start out with doing some motion. Let's have a circle that's in the center. And I think I want to start with just getting some nice sign action on it. Let's erase that background and let's use a sign slowed down. And let's see what this looks like, plus X. So we got something that's going to go back and forth. Oop, a little bit too far. Maybe a little bit less movement. And I think I want to try and get kind of an archy thing going. So let's make a Y. We'll decide if it should also be a sign or maybe, actually let's use height. Or should I be using a cosine? All right. Let's see, I think I want to have actually a kind of 2-to-1 ratio, so maybe that was right. And whoops, let's leave a trace and see what our motion is. Nope, that is not what I was going for, although it is nice. What exactly am I going for? Let's get this thing going faster with a cosine. All right, we got a nice circle. And just bringing it back. Now I kind of just want to make a phase. Now I guess I do need a 2-to-1 ratio. Ah, there we go. That's closer to what I was looking for. Okay, not infinity. Two pi. Nope, also not what I'm looking for. 3. Okay, that's pretty close. I think I'll slow it down a bit. Leave a little bit of a trail. Hang on, maybe it's about how much this thing goes up and down. Oh well, let's play with a circle and see what we can do. Eventually building out some kind of class and making a bunch of different things move. Let's let an S be a frame count of 20. Let's hide our display and speed that thing up a bit so it gets bigger and smaller. Yeah, we have one thing that's going a little fast. Let's slow it down a bit. Let's just get some loops going. Okay, something super weird was happening with the classes. If we save this video, we're definitely going to have to cut that beginning part out of it. Yeah, for now let's just play with some loops and some moving motions. It's super interesting playing with sine and a loop and just sort of having the offset of each copy that's inside of it be a little bit further than the next. So without any offset of these things, they're all just sort of following each other. But then I can give a really nice offset by using I in there. That's without the height being offset. Maybe give their height as well, some kind of offset. Follow the leader. Or something totally different. Start to juggle in a way. You can leave a longer trace on each one. Get a whole bunch of things going. Their sizes are a little too synchronized with each other, so that's also a nice spot to use some offset. And actually slow everything down a ways. Let's let this thing get a little bit wider. Take up our whole screen. And get a whole bunch of them going. Tweak the aesthetic a little bit, play with outlines, and then it's nice just to sometimes turn off the background altogether and just let that build up. Okay, but now they're all very much on the same trajectory, and maybe that should be tweaked a bit. Now they're doing, yeah, kind of a 5-to-1 ratio. If I get rid of these, we can see it a bit faster what their path is. Maybe if this was slowed down, they would leave even nicer fades of each other. Let's offset them even more. We'll just find some interesting clusters in there. Make slightly longer trails. And maybe even slow them down a bit more. Actually, I'll slow it way down. Nope, too far. Although it could be nice without a background at all. Just let it build up shapes. That was definitely too slow. And let's let these things get way bigger. We have just 5 of them. Making some fun screensavers here. Let me do a push and a pop. And whoops, translate. Instead of actually drawing them at that spot, let's translate them so we can rotate. So now they're actually sitting 0, 0 at those spots, and then get to play with some rotate. Maybe they also need to offset. And maybe let them get way bigger so they can totally, or even width, let them cover up the whole page. Let's just have a few. I'm curious if with this OBS running at the same time, if we can switch and do some 3D stuff. So let's give this a try. Go into 3D, and I'm gonna stop moving to the center of the page because we already are the center of the page. Here the background doesn't make a difference, or there's no transparency on it, it's either on or off. But then we can do other things like rotate in a Y direction could be nice. but somehow need to erase some of those lines because they're building up too much. So I could cheat and draw all of this on a layer and then show that in 2D with a opacity. Or maybe we'll just alternate the stroke to tweak it between black and white so it's not always covering it up. So sometimes it should be black, sometimes it should be white. Can manually change it, but should find some nice rhythm. Maybe we set the stroke to be white, and if the frame count modulo every like 15 frames, we'll get a black stroke. Or every 5 frames. Let's clear it once, see what that looks like. Center these things a bit. Or maybe now they just need to spin way faster to leave a bit less of a trail. Yeah, but fading out is super nice and probably worth doing. So I think I'm going to draw this stuff on a layer instead. And let's call this let layer 3D and tell it to be this thing. And draw all that fun stuff to there. And get ready at the very end to say, let's have our image, layer 3D 0, 0, and take away WebGL here, but first let's add all that stuff. Layer 3D, where's our layer? Great graphics. Oh, we're missing that guy. Oh, we got it in there twice. What happened? There we go. Yeah, so now all the 3D stuff is technically happening on another layer, which lets us constantly clear that layer so it has like a background. And now we can get a faded background. Maybe transparent backgrounds are going to be coming to P5 in the future in WebGL mode. That would be really fun. All right. It's getting a little screensaver. It's been a little screensaver like. We should tweak this thing and make it quite a bit different. Maybe instead of moving these things all over the place, let's just put them in the center for a sec. So now we got some kind of cool spinning wheels. Let them get way bigger. Let's have it be based on my mouse. And now they're spinning way too fast. Some fun with perspective and shading and tracing. One of them has no rotation because it's the 0 in our loop. Might be nice. Maybe it's nice to be able to spin this thing around. Maybe I'll do a layer 3D dot orbit control. I forget if I can do that on a layer or if that's only on the main layer. No, I think that's only on the main canvas. Dope. Never mind. It's almost like as they get closer towards the camera, they should maybe slow down to leave less of this stripe going across. So that's actually trippy. I think they need more space to each other. Whoa, trippy. Yeah, I think right now I'm just creating one of those wind laser cut metal thingies. And experiencing different amounts of wind. Like what if it's a super small amount that they're offset from each other? Start it over. Even that is too much. Aka's eye is in there. Start it over. Maybe there's some really nice moire effects happening through video compression. Maybe it's nice to now burst these things into some 3D space, actually. Because if I do some rotation, we'll see the whole thing spin around. Layer 3D dot rotate Y radians frame count. Whoa, way too fast. Ah, because I need to do this layer reset. That's what's happening. Layer 3D dot reset. The transformations get all added up, added up, added up. Okay, so now the thing is spinning in 3D. It's actually not as flat as I thought because they're all spinning as well. But maybe it's kind of cool to let these things go into a three-dimensional space. Let's slow it down even more. And start translating with a Z here instead of just X, Y. So let's invent some Z value. What do we want it to be? Maybe it is, yeah, let's also use sine. First load way down and go times 500. So these things can go pretty far in and out. Let's stop spinning it for a minute and check out what it looks like. Okay, the whole cluster is moving way fast because I'm not using I yet. So let's separate them. I times 5 plus. But maybe this whole thing should be quite slow, the path that they go on. And I'm going to make way less. Let's just see what a few of these things look like. I've got an interesting flickering happening. That must be some kind of like WebGL glitching. Maybe a couple of them are sitting right near the same spot as each other. This is hypnotic vision. Yeah, interesting. Maybe now I'll let the whole thing spin, although it is nice that it's not spinning because it's creating these kind of eclipses of each other. And I have a feeling if it spins, too much might be happening, but let's see. I think I'm making a contact lens commercial, at least in that side view, right here, droplets. Bing, Control S. Something really fun you can do in P5LIVE is you can always just hit export snapshot, saves the code and the PNG. It's saving a screenshot of what it sees plus a current version of our code. That way you can always go back and view exactly where your code was at, but it's also Control S is the shortcut. So at certain moments it's really fun just to hit that and download, yeah, both where was my code at and what did it look like. I want to try and get that side moment again. Wow, trippy seeing those ones fly through the orb. I should probably give this thing a name because we've just been hanging out in new space this whole time. I'm going to create a folder and I'm going to call it P5LIVE Sessions Beta. And I'll give this guy a name and call it Hypnotic Lenses. And put it in there so we can start adding stuff up. And maybe I will clone it so I can leave it at that state and now start playing with a copy of it. We have both sitting there, and now we can start messing with something else and always come back to this if I screw it up, because I probably will. So what else should this thing do? Yeah, maybe I'll play with that other rotation again. I'm a sucker for Y rotation. It's always nice having things orbit kind of like a planet spins. But maybe it's time to involve some different shapes. Circles are awesome, but there's so many other shapes out there. Let's check out Rex again, see what that was doing. goes back to being like Windows portal style. Enter that door. No, that door. That door. Okay, but we need to take this somewhere else, not get too attached to this. Let's see. I mean, maybe color. Black and white is awesome. Those windmill thingies tend to have kind of like a wild spectrum color, but maybe just a little bit of color in here could be kind of cool. The question is, I still have this on, this alternating. What happens if I turn that off entirely and just have this glow? Maybe I'll let it slowly alternate between some RGB colors. It'd actually be easier to set the color mode to hue, saturation, and brightness, and then I don't need 3 colors. I mean, why don't I do that? Color mode HSB, and I think I need to say 100. And this is still working. Because this is maybe for everything, not the layer. I forget if that's for everything or not. And if I were to say mouse X 100, 100. Cool. Then we get to play with all kinds of crazy colors. And maybe here I'll do an absolute value of a sine of a frame count slowed down times 100. So it's just kind of slowly orbing through the color spectrum too fast. Slow it down. And we need to do an offset again, because right now everyone's following each other and they're all at the exact same speed changing colors. So let's use I again and give them some offset to each other. Let's play with some other offset of each other. And have a little bit less of a little bit less fade. It starts to get a little bit more laser-like. Maybe eventually can do some P5LIVE sessions with a laser. A lot of fade, let them actually just turn off background and see what it looks like leaving a shape, because it's going to do all kinds of cool Z-index fighting where it's going to kind of rip into each other's space and leave something behind. Way more color than I would ever use, but getting some really nice patterns in there. On the right side, maybe we try to exploit some of those moire effects that we're getting, finding the right speeds to get those things to appear more. What I think I'm also going to try doing is going back to black and white and maybe set some of them to be white, some to be black, and see what kind of interesting zebra patterns we can get. But first, let's speed up this color change and see what that looks like. Get some Dr. Seuss going. Slow it down again, add even more. What does it look like with a bunch of them fighting each other? All kinds of ripping in to each other's form. And let's just try another form. Let me copy this guy, or actually turn it off. Let me do layer 3D dot stroke. Doesn't really matter the color, I don't think. R, hue, saturation, 0 saturation, brightness, lots of brightness. Okay, now everything is white. Interesting. Oh, now we're getting all kinds of trippy moire effects in there. Should probably zoom into it or just make the things way bigger to leave a bigger trace. Yeah, it's so much fun playing with WebGL artifacts just from scaling of things. I haven't even played back the image that I'm making bigger to sort of rip it a little bit, forcing it to be bigger. Right now it's 1:1. Drawing on 3D and just showing it as a layer in case I want to have some transparency like that. But let's keep leaving a trace and let's zoom into this thing. We could either translate way closer or make the things way bigger. Whoops, that's the Z. Let's make the height of these things even bigger. Maybe they just move too fast. Give it a fresh slate. We'll test the compression algorithms, how well they can handle little fine lines. But maybe it's nice to fade in and out to use this, to use something similar for the brightness. And speed it up a bit, get some stripes happening. Too fast. Yeah, it's really nice, those ones that just go from like a smooth shade from one to the next. Maybe it's interesting taking away the offset and having everyone do it all together. I think they're synchronized, yep. Okay, some other things need to happen. I think we need to get some other shapes in there doing things. What's always fun is having a sphere. That's not making it so much different. But it might add to our overlays. Let's make this thing with my mouse. Go inside the sphere and let these things kind of fight it out. Curious how just pixelated this stuff is becoming. Temporarily turn off our other stuff and then we just got a sphere, because it's also quite cool just seeing what that does, leaving this trace behind. Just a sphere. Yeah, maybe we turn off a bunch of this other stuff and just play with spheres for a little bit. Let's make this thing height divided by 2 divided by 3. Clear everything, or keep a background happening. I can temporarily turn off all that loop. Maybe I clone this again because I had some interesting things happening there. And let's just rename this and call it Hypnotic Sphere. I can clear all that. Get back to just a little bit of code. We don't need a rect mode, no fill. Okay, that's good. We're still in this color mode, so that could be interesting to play with again. Let's do a frame count modulo. We should play with some modulos. Could be interesting, but sign will be smoother. Oops. It's too fast. Actually, let's put this down just before this sphere, because maybe we'll make a couple of these things. Let's just copy that and test making a gigantic one. That's maybe the opposite of it, so they're kind of fighting it out. Even slower, they're going too fast. It should become a variable. It's kind of interesting, that little moment just before it starts to go down and be smaller than the other one. So maybe it's interesting to say you got to be that size plus just like that little bit of offset being bigger and smaller than the other one. 150, we can see it where it's ripping in front and behind. Let me turn this off for a minute. No background. Just some nice shadings, and maybe it's nice to also set the detail of the sphere for how many edges it should have. I believe, let's check out the reference real quick. I believe that is, yep, detail X and Y, the next two values of it. So we can change this and say it's actually a 5 by 5. And it'll be a pretty rough shape. And to do the same thing here. To match it, well, maybe it'll be interesting to just play with slightly different number of vertices on the two spheres. At the very least, they should probably rotate at slightly different speeds. Hopefully the audio isn't too loud out there. Okay, this stop seeing that change objects. check something. Check. Testing. Hopefully the audio is working. Okay, let's speed this one up a little bit. Push and pop so that I can do, oh, we need to do it actually to our layer. So I could say just be a little bit faster. Frame count times 0.1. We might not be far enough inside of this thing because it's kind of covering up the camera. So I think I'm going to move us even closer in and say layer 3D dot translate 0, 0, 500 is one way. I could also just make the spheres bigger. Maybe this should be on a totally different axis. And get its own stroke. Oh, it already does. It's just the invert of it. Saturation. Yeah, let's play with some different colors. I wonder we can make this thing look anaglyphic. Have to find the right hue for red. There it is. Time to bust out 3D glasses. And I'm not sure if I really want that thing so far in front, or it's kind of interesting maybe to let that thing zoom in and out from us so we can just sort of see what does this thing look like near and far. So I'm going to map my mouse Y that goes from 0 to height to be minus 1000 to a positive 1000. Yeah, kind of interesting seeing that thing from afar. So that was to test it. Let's turn background back on for a sec. And let's do another sign. That goes a little bit slower than that. Without a background. Yeah, I'm curious what this is like with a lot of details and not very many at all. So let's make another thing and say let det, which was 5, det, no, just saw it det. There, let's call it verts. And plug it in here. change this thing to be, I think it's up to 24 you can do. You can technically go more and it complains, but it works. Wow, it leaves some nice patterns on the background while having no background, I believe. Ooh, I think we've got to exploit that. I need to let this thing get way smaller. So I should say to 2000. So it's going to get really big and pass us by. And maybe I'll just want to say, hey, it's an absolute value in the negative direction. So it's only going to get up to a certain size, and then it should zoom way out from us. Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, it is. Wow, it's leaving a cool pattern behind. Let's get a snapshot. But I need to let it get even further behind. So I think that's a lot about this. Yeah, it's two different things. I can either send the thing way back there, or I can tell it not to get as big as height. Maybe I'll also put that a variable. Let max age equal height. Let's swap it out. And tell it to be half of that, or a quarter of that. Yeah, the bummer now is it's not getting very big. We need to be able to let it to get huge and then get really small. So it might be better letting it be this big size. Wow, that's trippy. It's really nice when it makes such a complex image. That would have been really hard to program. Instead, just a couple rotations leave this trace behind that's way complex. Wow, wild patterns there. Okay, gotta let the thing get even smaller, maybe just 3000, so it's gonna be even 4000. Let's see what that does. It got up to that size, and then it's gonna hopefully drift far away. Keep going. It didn't keep going. Yeah, maybe actually this should be some value based on the same guy here. So at that same speed. Oh, let's see what happens. Interesting. Some kind of eyeball. Yeah, there must be a limit how much I can send that thing back. So actually I could also just play with scale. Let's try that out. Goodbye. And make it double so fast so the scale happens at a different rate. Yeah, the motion is too fast, but it's leaving some interesting traces. Let's go the other way. Slow that down compared to the other. Great. Could capture that moment. Yeah, maybe those colors need to be able to shift as well. We've been hanging out in anaglyphic land for a long time. That's based on this being 150, so maybe it's interesting to have some value that's slightly different than each other there. Like maybe I should do something like let the hue be, let's just try a frame count modulo 100. Plug that in, see what we get. I think it's slowly going through the color spectrum. Yep. And let's throw, actually let's just borrow this guy. No, let's use it again and say hue minus 50. Just have it always be 50 less than the other one. Or plus 50, that's a better idea. Plus 50. Modulo 100 to keep it from ever getting to be more than 100. Yeah, it's becoming kind of a fireball sphere. From this second one that's just kind of at times being bigger and smaller than it. Maybe 250 was too much. I'll try it just a little bit bigger and smaller. Then there's even more z-index fighting. I don't see our two tones anymore, so I screwed something up there. Or it could simply be that this guy is slowly signed away. Yep, maybe here it comes in. I'm starting to see blue appear. Sliced open a kiwi. Okay, we need to let this thing get much bigger again. Maybe not so big. Or maybe just once in a while to leave some image as our total background. Yeah, I think we need more spinning, more z-index fighting. Let's add a background again. Kind of see what those two things are doing. We turn off these for a minute. Okay, they're now huge. That's the orbit that they're making. Interesting. And let's make the max size not quite so big so we can see them. Yeah, so kind of doing this pulsing like so. And maybe it's interesting to get some fighting happening where it's only a little bit plus and minus, and maybe even going much faster. So this thing is just kind of like breathing around the other sphere, and that might create some nice ripping into each other. Let's take away the background. And let's make it bigger. And play with our rotations. This is called ripe orange meets unripe orange. And let's scale it again. Let it leave a trace. It needs to get bigger. And slow down. Wow, trippy. Yep, let's slow those things down. I think it's this guy needs to get slowed down. Whoa, definitely not that guy. Something else is going way too fast. Might be this one, the scale. Both of them should be slower. Yeah, so now this is with the saturation, no, the brightness adjusting itself. If we want to stay in color mode, we can get rid of that. I took it off the top one. Maybe it's interesting to let this value not always be 20 offset. That's going to create certain combinations. 40 off from it is interesting. 10 is off from it, but maybe that value needs to also change with a sine wave. Or maybe 40 is the perfect amount to be offset from the other one. Wow, now it's leaving such a different kind of image because it's slowed so far down. And photo, screenshot. Okay, let's try this in black and white. We have our hue. I don't know if that'll make a difference. Let's just take away the saturation and see what happens. Will they just become the exact same thing? I'm not sure. Or will it be a metallic everything? Watch this thing slowly get big and then small again. This is the silver paint version. Much lighter than I expected it to be, but there are nice patterns in there. Yeah, something needed to be actually no saturation. I think its brightness should have been different. One needed to be darker than the other one. There we go. Now it's way more of a silver-like. I can also play with that. It can be interesting to bring back what was already there. Or to just say, hey, one is half bright, one is not at all, and create a nice silver. And wait for it. Yeah, much nicer pattern. Or that we can see it better. Yeah, it's quite an organic ripple quality. using a sphere to trace a fancy image. Saved. All right, I think I'm going to wrap up this episode of P5Live Sessions Beta. I've been editing that same code the whole time, so I should probably call this one, let me give it a quick name and call this one Sphere Silver, and clone it and make the other one colorful again. Let's bring back the saturation. Saturation. Brightness. Yeah, this was a nice special color scale scheme. So I'll call this one Sphere Colorful. Okay, I'll go into other things. Hopefully this becomes a weekly stream, checking out, just playing with P5Live, going and exploring different references, eventually playing along with music, making these things audio reactive. As an outro, let me exit my full screen here. Just remind you, you can always find this at p5live.org, where it's going to load whatever other sketch I was demonstrating at the last time I used it. And as a quick shout out for if you want some more streaming, this weekend on the 31st of October 2020, Halloween, here in Basel at basel.codes, we're going to be having a virtual PCD, Processing Community Day 2020. basel.codes/2020, and you can find out about the program later. We'll have the stream coming straight from here. We're going to have workshops in the morning. We'll have a P5JS intro for complete basics, learning from scratch. I'll give a demo insight to P5Live and walk you through all the features, all kinds of things that you can do in that environment. Then I believe we're going to have a workshop on shaders. We're going to have a workshop on bots. And I'm forgetting something else. And also using Terminal and Twitter will be our afternoon workshops. So maybe see you on the interwebs next week or already this weekend. Cheers.